Good morning all. I would like to welcome you to the plenary session titled IT and Accessibility from Policy to Practice. My name is Nasser Siabi. I'm the Chief Executive of LameyC. We're an organization who provide technologies for people with disabilities at workplace. The subject of disability is an important component of equality and diversity, but it doesn't seem to have such a high profile with current practices in most organizations. Yet it is a very important component, especially at the time of economic downturn. Disabled people do seem to get a raw deal when it comes to opportunities. The organization, which is heavily involved and leading the campaign for reducing the barriers for disabled people in workplace and indeed customers, is Employees Forum for Disability. It's the largest organization of its kind in the world, and it currently has membership more than 300 big companies and FTSE 100 companies, and it employs about 20% of the workforce in UK. The EFD has set up a task force which is called Business Task Force for Accessible Technology to spearhead the campaign for accessibility when it comes to IT, which is the everyday usage for everyone. We are all having to deal with technology, but sadly the design has been lacking somewhat, and really somebody needs to take some initiative to make sure suppliers provide an accessible technology for everyone to carry out the task as we all expect to do. I have a real pleasure to welcome Steve LameyC, who is Director General of HMRC and the Chair of the BTAT. And he's very passionate about the cause, and I'd like to welcome him. Thank you.
Thank you, good morning. I'm delighted to be here and delighted to see so many people here. It's great. Accessibility and disability has been important to HMRC. You'll see from the slides later, we employ about 80-odd thousand people, and about 15% of which have a disability, and we're very proud of that. A lot of my private sector colleagues, a lot of people in the EFD, barely get to 1%. We really do want an inclusive organisation that represents the society at large, and I think we've been very successful. How successful we've been in supporting those is the story I probably want to talk about for the next 20 minutes or so. We've done a lot, and we're very proud of what we've done, but what we've discovered by doing that, there's huge gaps. We rely on heroes, and heroes are fantastic people to have in organisations, and heroes will get you so far. They've got me here, they've got me very interested and passionate about this subject, and I think we owe an awful lot of them to the heroes in HMRC. But being heroic isn't going to be good enough. Isn't going to be good enough for us to get the maximum value, maximum engagement, and to give the most back to the disabled customers we have. And that's where I really got interested in. What can I do as a Director General on the board and all the executive committees of HMRC to make a difference? So hopefully you'll see some of that, but please don't assume we've got it right. This is a journey. We don't get it right all the time. What we think we're doing is going in the right direction. So hopefully you'll share that with me over the next 20 minutes or so. We're going to cover what we've done, the challenges we still face, the world in which we operate, IT. I was the CIO for 3 and a bit years at HMRC, and saw a lot of this at first hand. Now, I couldn't believe that we were asking people to sell us equipment at millions of pounds and there was no accessibility features in it. I just assumed that was the case. Why wouldn't it be? Our IT partners aren't ignorant about the factor, but we as customers don't ask for it. And as such, learned an awful lot from the failings when we didn't ask them to make sure that our products were accessible. And also to share some interesting work we're doing with BTAT to actually bring this to mainstream. You know, the green agenda, I guess, is one of those freaky ideas that somebody had about 10 years ago. I worry that we're in the same place, and that the green agenda is becoming mainstream, and the politicians talk about it a lot. I don't hear them talking anywhere near as much about disability as I'd like them to. So perhaps that's something we can start and learn from the green agenda and take that forward. What we've delivered in HMRC is an awful lot of effort. You'll see on the slides that we've got 450 Dragon users, 40 JAWS, and we support 200 other typical applications. We have got the biggest collection, I think, of ergonomic mice, and there must be a world record in this anywhere in the world. When I was the IT director, actually trying to find out why we had so many, every flavour, every colour, every shape, every breed. We are world class. We have more than anybody else. And keyboards, you will see the full array of every keyboard you could possibly anywhere see in the world in HMRC buildings. And we're quite pleased that we've got those. Whether we've got all the right ones, whether we needed every single one of those as a business person, I don't know, but we've certainly got the collection. We do now build accessibility into our software lifecycle. We thought it was there because it would be sensible that it was. It now is. We have a team of 6 people dedicated to making sure all the testing and scripting happens. We look at our SLAs. We go through it in matters in great detail. We've got dedicated Jaws and Dragons teams. You can see Chris later on will talk to you about her experiences of that. And we have coordinators, and we have full diversity strategies. In fact, I'm not the main disability champion on the board. Mandy Dawes does that. This is really from my IT history, so they've got 2 for the price of 1 on the HMRC board for disability. In terms of our challenges, you'd think these were particularly great. We've got the legal ones, the Disability Discrimination Act and the equality duties. But my biggest one, and I wish we put this first on the slide, is winning hearts and minds. Not of the board, but of our managers. We've got 17,000 managers in HMRC, and some of them are truly brilliant. Some of them go the extra mile. Some of them help staff who find it difficult to do their daily work. They go the extra mile. There's great stories we can recount of managers and diversity champions all turning up to help and support one member of staff. But the reason why I'm here is that, sadly, not all our managers are heroes. Some of them would prefer to have an easy life and would not want to employ somebody who had a disability. And that's why I think I've got to help the organisation see the value in this. Not because it's a nice thing to do, not because I think we're in the civil service, but very much because it is a good business reason to do it. We get huge value out of our disabled staff, and we've got to help all our managers see that. So heroic managers, again, are fantastic. I want to make sure this is actually part of mainstream HMRC. So the winning the hearts and minds is to get all our managers to see that. Changing user perceptions. Yeah, our disabled users believe that those good managers that we care and appreciate those, the others don't. And I think we've got to help all our disabled users to know that we're here for them and we are working with them to try to help. But we don't get it right with 15% of our 80,000 workforce. I know some of our disabled users are slightly disenfranchised, but my challenge is to get them all back on side. The basics, you'll see in the next slide, a huge organisation, 80,000 staff. Sadly, we've got over 100,000 PCs. It says 90 odd just to save our embarrassments, because we can never add up why we've got 20,000 more PCs than we have staff. But we are working on that one. So I think we tell a slight white lie in the next slide. But I know my IT colleagues are still working on that. The basics just don't go away. They're there every day, very expensive. We have, like I guess all of you in the audience, huge pressures on cost. We're taking hundreds of millions out of our budget every year, and we need staff to be more productive. We can't be seen to be a charity. We can't have people, oh, well, he's disabled, don't worry about it. That is not the way we want to approach this. We want to help our disabled colleagues get the most out of working for HMRC. So we're doing this for a good business reason as well, as all the other right reasons, I think. And the staff themselves, they get very, very frustrated. We have more disabled staff who want to do a better job for us, who actually want to give more, and somehow or other we're stopping them doing that. So that frustration they have, I think it's something I can help them turn to the good. And trying to change the IT industry. They actually want to be changed. They're actually very, very open to this discussion, but we haven't yet brought enough power to bear to get them to change. As I said, 95,000, it's closer to 100,000, but I'll trust you not to tell the world, especially Private Eye, because then they don't lead on how hopeless HMRC again and some other matter. Those who are IT freaky, and I know one or two of you in the audience, because I know you, so you might as well admit it, you understand what 460,000 function points is, because that's huge. That is very, very big. And there's probably, the MOD might be the only player in the world to be anywhere near as big as on that, so it's a massive IT organisation. This next one about how many sort of bits of files we have is massive. 14 million books and articles in the British Library, and we have 80 times that much We've got all your tax records. The good thing about HMRC, we know everybody. The furniture, none of you in this room, we don't touch one way or t'other. So we will know all about you somewhere. 430 million emails a year. 200 million phone calls into our contact centres. And 6 million customer contacts on our website. This is a huge organisation. And remember, 15% of the staff are disabled. 56 million P14s, that's about how much you earn every year. So there must be 56 million people earning money in the country still, which is good news. And we pay out 6 million to 6 million tax credit customers. That's growing. It's nearly 7 million now, actually. So that's a large customer. So we don't probably miss many customers or people in the UK. I think we claim there's about 60 million people in the UK. And interesting, if you add those numbers up, you do worry about there must be about 4 million kids under the age that we don't collect tax off. But I'll let somebody else worry about those numbers. Just a size, 50,000 customers an hour, or any moment in time, not an hour, will be on our website at the SAP. Amazon don't have that at Christmas. Put it in perspective. You know, their systems melt down at Christmas. We have 50,000 for the whole of January, typically, trying to file their SA online. So anybody in this audience who likes to do it in January, please don't. It makes to make my life a misery as the CIO. But then it became a competition, I think, as to how much a life you could make miserable. So if you could avoid January, it would be helpful. But 50,000 every minute don't. So it's an awful lot. 23% of all HMRC's budget, and that's well over, it'll be well over £1 billion, £1.2 billion the last time I saw the IT budget, we spend on IT. So it's a huge amount. It's, we think about 2% of the whole UK spend on IT. So you just put in perspective how big us and DWP are the same size. So between DWP and HMRC, we're a couple of percent of the whole IT budget and spend in the UK. And as you can see, we used to collect 450 billion of revenue. This slide's out of date. Sadly, with a credit crunch, I think if we got 400, they'd be very pleased. So it is a huge challenge that we face with the credit crunch as we go through. And we do pay out £30 billion in benefits, child tax credits, working tax credits. So you can see the first real challenge we've had is how do we provide an effective, usable individual service to all those customers. 15% of our staff are disabled. How do we do that across that organisation? While ensuring we don't break the bank and we deliver the right services. Before we go into those details, what we do, if you look at the world, IT products aren't awfully well designed still. I've got a BlackBerry and I've got awful eyesight apart from if I wear glasses. And that's too fiddly for a man of my age. I can't do all this and wear glasses at the same time currently. And I've got my BlackBerry now, you know, with huge print on, so I get about 3 words a page on it, which my staff thinks hilarious. But it works for me. I can see it takes ages. My thumb is going to drop off quite soon because the amount of times you flick through. But it can work. But how many of our old systems don't do that? You get the single monochrome version, no colour, no shape, no interaction, no connection with the other services we can. It still happens. Products that we put in last year still don't have some of the stuff I'd expected to. So we have a problem. But they do understand it. You know, through BTAT and through EFD, we spend a lot of time talking to them. They all say, yep, you're absolutely right. And it won't cost us much to do it, but you've never asked us. You as one of the biggest customers, second biggest customer in the UK, have really never asked us until late to do something about it. And to tell you the truth, Steve, none of your other CIO colleagues do either. If they asked us, we'd do it. Because why not? It actually is good use for a lot of our customers. Lots of the things that we provide for disabled customers are really good for us. It really is a win-win. So they don't get it yet. The business case, well, why would we do it? Aren't they just a pain in the neck? You know, why do you have to employ them? Yet they don't understand the value of employing the disabled staff that we have in HMRC. They don't get it. And as such, why would they build a business case? So one of the things we've really got to do is do a business case. And what the whole thing about BTAT is that we need to change the market. The market is there, it does what it does, but we've got to help change their mind. Like the Green Agenda has, in terms of they have to tell us about every server, what power rating it's got, what data center, what rating it's got. Let's start really forcing in some of these web standards on how accessible the tools are. So the second challenge we've got, is letting alone sorting out my own organisation, is how do we get the whole IT industry to change? Yeah, I'm big, HMRC are very ugly, as you can see by me standing in front of you, but we still have made very little difference yet in getting that changed. So what do we need to do? So working with Susan Scott Parker, a very inspirational lady who runs Employees Forum on Disability, has been doing it for many years, we came up with the Business Task Force on Accessibility Technology. I'm very proud to be asked to be the first inaugural chairman of this. And as you see, there's some great organisations on there that joined very early on.
Steve, you need to move the slide.
Sorry, I knew there was a really good slide there. Great organisations there. DWP, one of our partners in government, have been very involved with us. And as you see, some great private sector organisations. Since that slide, Bupa have joined, GlaxoSmithKline have joined, B-Sky-B have joined. So there's lots of big organisations now wanting to join in. And you'll see some of the value that we're doing. We're being very practical. One of the things I always wanted to achieve in this role was to be pragmatic, not to come and talk at conferences, not just to come and say, this is really interesting, we should do more, but do some very practical things. And what we've been doing so far is looking at those problems. So I didn't realise all those problems existed until I shared it with my colleagues from all those other companies. And we say, yeah, we have a problem. We've got some heroes. Sean, here on the platform with me today, is a hero in HMRC. He has kept this going undercover, just in case management found out about it for years. Yeah, and there are heroes like Paul, like Sean, in lots of companies. A great guy at Lloyds Bank. He's put his career on the line to make this happen. But Lloyds Bank have just about got it now, so he can come out of the closet and say, hey, I'm helping. And so I'm very proud that HMRC have got Sean. I'm sure lots of you have got your Seans and your other colleagues in your organisations, but these people are fantastic. So I put my hands up to these guys. But at the end of the day, they've been able to do so much. And what we want to do from the Business Task Force is take that heroic, the ideals, what they were trying to achieve, and bring it into mainstream business sense. So our objectives are very much to influence the IT industry at the very senior levels, get the standards so that everybody can not use the excuse of, well, there's so many different standards for accessibility, into one place, and make sure there's one, and actually share good practice. It's been amazing just talking to my colleagues from other big organisations, what good ideas they've had, or what they've seen we do, and we've been benefiting from that swap shop type arrangement. And 3 really early examples of what came out of that work is our Golden 9. I'm sorry it's not 10. We are working on the 10th. But our chairman's from Canada, Susan, which says a lot if you know people from Canada. She likes the number 9, so we think it should be 10, and I'll show you the 9, and we are working on a 10th. What a business class template should be. How do we make this so that you can all take away something and get your organisations to buy into this? And actually, I think the first in the world is an accessibility maturity model. So where are we? Where is HMRC? How would you judge us in terms of are we a novice, or are we world class, or are we somewhere in between? And how do I know where I am? And then how do I know how to move from where I am to where I want to be? Because I might not need to be world class. HMRC, I think, does because of the scale of what we do. But I suspect there's a lot of organisations that don't need to be world class, but they need to be better than where they are. We thought creating a maturity model would be a great help. And Sean, thankfully, because it's very technical, is going to talk you through that in a minute. So the famous 9. If you're going to take this seriously, we all put our heads together and we came up with some common features. And appointing a champion, appointing somebody who's actually going to lead this, not be in the closet, not be a hero, but somebody on the board, someone senior in the organisation who will want to take this seriously. Ensuring, and all these wonderful organisations we have, and I'm sure we all love HR as much as I do, but they have a really important role to play in this, and do they today? Do they just nod? Should they be actually playing a more active role? Our marketing colleagues, in terms of what our customers need to know. When we buy things, the procurement people really make sure that when we say we want these things to be put into contracts, they are. And our IT colleagues, etc., etc. So we have to make sure that we have all that right team of people all singing from the same sheet. We need to have a really active way of talking to our customers, talking to our disabled staff, understanding what our disabled customers need from us. Have we got those formal structures in place to do that? As you see early on, we have, but have you? That's a really important channel. They get very frustrated when they don't think their voices have been heard, or we're senior management, and you will find this difficult to believe, or occasionally get it awfully wrong. It's amazing, I know, but we do, and because we think we know best. And one of the things I've been learning from a lot of work I do in PaySet, which is our change program in HMRC, is listen to the frontline staff, listen to the people using it. They probably know better. And that's what we've felt very importantly here we should do. Making sure that every employee who does need it gets the support. It shouldn't be too difficult to achieve. Establishing your baseline. Where are you? How do you know where you're on this journey if you don't actually know what you're not doing that you should be doing just to get on the journey? Creating partnerships with your suppliers. I don't think this is something we want to beat our suppliers up for. Why? They actually get it. They just haven't had the encouragement to turn it into something real. The whole product development life cycle. You know, when IT builds it, are they going to support it properly? Are we going to put the proper hardware? Are we going to make sure the testing's in place? And measuring and actually telling everybody how we're doing. We've got to bring this out of the closet. We've got to be mainstream about this. And actually talking very proudly about it as a business add-on, not as something we're doing wonderfully for disabled people, but the value they're bringing to the business, the value that we're giving to our disabled customers. The 10th, if we have one, and this is a bit of a negotiation going on currently, it will be about educating everybody with the future. You know, people coming out of university doing IT, it doesn't encompass accessibility. People coming into various roles in management, do we actually say, if you have disabled staff, these are the things we should be doing for them, these are the things we can do for them? So we think actually the 10th one will be an education program to make sure the IT professionals, the HR professionals, your line managers, all those people understand what's going on. So we think they're very important. They're still in draft, they're still working on them. I'm convinced we'll convince the Canadians to go from 9 to 10. So that'll be my challenge. The business case. We'd love to provide a template that you can take to your businesses and say, look, this isn't some soft, fluffy thing. We actually think there's a really good business value for doing it. It's not just about ticking the box and we're complying with legislation. We want a population that is represented in our workforce. We want to recruit from the widest possible pool of talent. We don't want to discriminate. We want to retain experienced and valuable staff when they become disabled. Because don't forget, people don't start for you sometimes disabled. They might become disabled in the wider sense of it as they work for you. So you're going to throw them out. You're going to help them deliver more and have a very fulfilling career. We want to increase productivity. As I said, this is a business-driven activity. We want them to be productive. They want them to be fully part of our community, not to be a separate group. And we also want our customers out there who find it difficult to engage with us in lots of ways to have the best online experience. How can we make that the best accessible experience for them? So we're building all that into a business case that will hopefully lots of people will be able to take away from the team that we've got in BTAT and share it with your organisations and put your own angles to it, but at least give you a template. And we work with AbilityNet on a wider sort of range of activities to improve the technology. The accessibility maturity model. You'll be glad to know Sean, the hero, is going to talk in a minute. You're going to get a rest from me. But it's a tool to help organisations say, where are you? It's not a threat, it's not a league table, it's you keep it to yourself. We've all done it so far in the BTAT, and we're sharing it with us just to see where we are. And we're all to the left of it, which is not the best place to be yet. But it's about encouraging ourselves to work on. But this is something that's not to be beaten up for, it's something to be used positively. It's got 8 strands in terms of the things we should be doing, and it's got 5 maturity levels. And what it does, it allows organisations to agree baseline. Where are we? Have we started the journey? We thought we were a long way down the journey, to be honest. We were quite shocked when we sort of measured ourselves and found, actually, despite the things we're doing, yeah, we're not on baseline, but we are nowhere near where we probably thought we'd like to be. It allows you in each individual business. We know there's not a golden wand. We know that the monies are difficult, but it does give you a choice as to where you want to aim for and what that will mean to all your staff and customers. And it allows you to set a strategy to get there. So it's still in draft, and we're hoping this will become very widely available, not just to the best, the top 300 in the world. So Sean's going to come, hopefully, and explain to you very briefly what's in the maturity model, and we'll then share some experience from my colleagues in a minute. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to run quite quickly through this. My contact details are on the slides, and the slides will be available if people want to contact me later. I'll be hanging around outside if anyone wants to lynch me. Could be a posthumous hero, the most popular kind. And willing to take questions at the end or so I will try and run through. If this is too quick, please do come and see me afterwards. My starting point is this. When I came into this field about 2.5 years ago, really knowing nothing about accessibility, my first thought was about standards. You need standards. Quickly learn that's just one of the things that you need. You see on the slide there, I think, and I've worked on this with the DWP and Graham Whippy from Lloyds Bank and the Employers Forum, that's just one of the strands. There are 8 strands if you're going to develop and deliver accessible services to your staff and to your customers. And within each strand, you can mature, you can grow. There's a kind of minimal entry level, which is not good enough. At the far end of the scale is world class, which takes a lot of money to get to. So you can look through this, and I have looked through this. We have workshops with our trade union colleagues, policy colleagues, disabled colleagues. I must get together and say, where are we? Where on that diagram in each of those strands are we? What are the most important things that we need to get done next? That sets our priority for this financial year, which is built into my own personal objectives and my work objectives. Where do we want to be in 2 or 3 years' time? It's a tool to help us where we are, focus on what our priority is, where we want to go, and have an agreed way forward. Okay, 8 strands, going to run through them quite quickly. Set the right environment. Yes, there are heroes, but if you don't get the board signed up, if you don't get this built into the departmental conscious, you're really not going to succeed in the long run. What are the sort of things you need to do? Well, clearly you need to get senior management buy-in. You clearly must involve your disabled staff and disabled customers. Today's focus, by the way, because it's Civil Service Live, is on staff. I wouldn't want anyone thinking that we don't think of disability for customers is important. We're focusing on staff today. Yes, we've got to win hearts and minds, we've got to educate, we've got to involve and that type of thing. That's not enough. You've got to have a strategy. As I said, we've been through the AMM here. That set our strategy for the next year. Tells us what we want to do and get that agreed. We have business objectives. Ideally, you want to build it into your business plans, which focus into your business unit plans, which focus into your division plans, and map together towards something that the department can say that's one part of the wider effort that we need to go on. Okay, so you've got business buy-in, you've got your strategy. That's not enough, because a lot of people think that we're doing this to stop us being sued under the DDA, and that's okay, that's one reason for it. But we've got a message that's got to go across here that Steve has already iterated, is that this is about making sure we've got a level playing field for staff, so we can recruit the best people, we can retain the best people, that we get high levels of take-up as well. You've got to understand what you're trying to do this and why you're trying to do it, and make sure that you're going there. So we do things like this in the department. Steve is here today. We have a board-level champion. We have a diversity equality scheme, a diversity strategy for us. We have diversity objectives in all staff's annual agreements and so on. We have an accessibility forum quarterly where we get people together from the different strands, learning, policy, IT and whatever, to make sure we understand where we're going. We have an external disabled customers consultation group. One of my big things for this year, I think, is about perception and communication for staff. When I tell staff what we do in the department, they don't know. They don't know we do all of these things. They're not happy, but they're a bit happier. Okay, having a strategy is not enough. You've got to have the right resources, you've got to have the right money in place and the right people. The worst thing in the world is when someone says, okay, I agree that you should have this reasonable adjustment, you need George, you need Dragon, you need keyboard. Who's going to pay for it? And then there's a bun fight for 3 months or 6 months. Can't do that. You've got to start every year knowing exactly where the funding comes from. And it's not just funding for reasonable adjustments, it's who does the testing, who does the scripting, who does the development and all that. So get that sort of stuff in plan, and then after that it's just a budget like any other budget. You should monitor it, you should have a strategy for it, you should be looking at your investment appraisal for that. These are the sorts of things that we have in place, dedicated budgets, and we do budget reviews and make sure that we're investing it in the right priority areas as well. But you've got to have the right people in place. As Steve has said, we've got a dedicated IT accessibility team, 6 people. Below them we have what we call a tier 2 team who field some of our help desk queries. We have a dedicated accessibility service level manager, both from our outsourced partner and our internal staff. We have a dedicated accessibility solutions architect who makes sure that all the right requirements are built into the right systems and can answer questions, a source of expertise. We have a range of people in place. Training is so important. We're developing a Dragon mentoring group with Dragon staff. Our learning division putting in place a Dragon learning facilitator team. They've got a JAWS learning facilitator team in place. Staff and resources are so important. That's a foundation to build on. Okay, then of course, right, fine, you got that, you need standards. Standards are hard. W3C standards for external facing websites, they're good, they're maturing, WCAG 1, WCAG 2 coming on, that's great. Non-web standards, well, there's ISO standards, technical standards, out of date. working with the European Union, trying to encourage them. They're producing what they call Mandate 376, a set of European-wide accessibility standards for the industry to use. The industry want it. The industry argue, though, that without existing standards, why should they build to any standards? There's so many, which one should they choose? And it's easier for them to build to. Internally, we can't allow it to happen, so we have what we call our 12 golden rules. It's different from the 9 golden commitments. We've boiled down the ISO to simple things that people can understand. I can tell you about those. Rule number 1, all software must be accessible via the keyboard. And rule number 2, users must be able to change their own colours. Rule number 3, users must be able to change their stuff. Labelling, that type of thing, really important. So we have that, and that's what we build to. Get advice. There are lots of people out there who've got good information, RNIB, we're Gold Card members of the Employers Forum, who want you to go and ask them if you have any queries, give them a ring. And of course, standards are no good as a set of pages on a shelf somewhere. You've got to go out and raise awareness of them. You've got to go out and educate people and help people to understand them. And then if you can do all of that, you're still not there. What you've got to do then is learn from implementation. PIRs, look at how you've done it. Can we improve our standards? Are there things we can learn? Okay. But that's not enough, because you can have a book of standards. What happens if they don't get incorporated into your software development lifecycle? Got to have that built into our software development lifecycle. It's really important to us. We have a typical life cycle from a requirement stage to a define and design stage to a build stage to an implementation stage. Different requirements have got to be built into each way. We have a gateway process. You can't get from one to the other unless you pass the right tests. And the test, one of the tests is, have you built to the right accessibility standards? So we have that. That tells people what they should do. I suppose ultimately, no, it's not enough to think about functionality. One of our really big challenges is usability. Okay, technically accessible from using Dragon or a keyboard or whatever, but what we're trying to do in the longer run is look at the totality of how a user works. So they have an application that's accessible, but when they use it, they'll have Mail open, they'll have Internet Explorer open, they'll have some of their training packages, they might have 2 or 3 different applications only. How do they do their job, getting all those things to work together without killing the PC at the same time? So trying to raise standards from simply accessibility of the product to looking at the totality of your job, that is a big challenge for us, big, big challenge. And of course, it's not enough just to have that. Your online help has got to be accessible. We had years ago a manual that said click here, click there, and a JAWS user came forward and says, I can't use that, so someone produced a Braille version. It still said click here, click there. Complete waste of time. You've got to understand how that works. And ultimately, we're trying to make development, accessibility within development, business as usual. It's not something extra. It's something you do. You wouldn't develop systems which don't perform, which are insecure, which are not robust. You wouldn't build them which are inaccessible. Get it? Business as usual. And to do that, test. If you're not testing for accessibility, you can forget the rest. You'll never do it. And there are 3 types of testing which we recommend and we've put into place in our department. Developers must test against the paper standards, yes. Then you must test within our accessibility team with Dragon and JAWS and Zoom Text and so on. And that's not enough to make sure they work. And then we test with our disabled users, and if it's an externally facing system, our disabled customers as well. It's not just testing for accessibility, it's testing for usability and so on. So those are important. One of my big, big, big objectives this year is doing more awareness raising within our IT section so they really understand what we're trying to achieve. But that's not enough, because you can have all of that, you do your testing, great, I tested it, it failed, but you're testing it, we tested it, excellent. Governance is really important, making sure that when you go back, that if something does fail, that it gets fixed, that there's a plan for dealing with it, make sure it doesn't get to that point in the first place. But that's not enough. You can do all of that. You've then got to conduct audits. Go back. What do we do? What did we do well? What didn't do well? We seem to go through testing all right. Have we found problems since? That's another big thing for us. Are we putting into place, into effect, all the things which we think we're doing? In particular this year, we think everything should go through accessibility testing. Is it? Are all of our projects going through accessibility? Let's do an audit and just check that. Okay, you can do all of that and you can get scuppered because then you go and buy something which is inaccessible. So it's got to be built into procurement as well. Building stuff into procurement, follow our internal strands, and follow our internal standards is important. But it's not enough just to say there's a requirement in here that it must be accessible and follow our standards. Okay, do you score against that? Do you score highly against that? What do you do if something fails? Is it becomes a mandatory? We're not going to buy that because it's inaccessible. It'd be nice to get there. The problem that we sometimes face, especially with small products, specialist products, is that everything on the market is inaccessible. And there's no good choice. So within your procurement, you have to have a route forward that says, if that's your only option, you've got to go back and insist with the supplier that there's a plan for fixing it. What's your plan? What's the penalties, ideally, for doing that? Of course, it's not just about buying products. You've also got to think about your external suppliers, people who come in with their staff and help you. Do they understand your requirements? And do they have expertise themselves? Make sure that that's it. One of the things we want to do, there's another group, which I haven't mentioned, they're called the Cross-Government Accessibility Network, us, DWP. We try to get together. One of the things we want to look at this year is procurement and try to talk to the OGC. Okay, you can do all of that, and you're still not there. Legacy systems are really important. You can build new systems, but we've got 600 legacy systems, and the reality for most staff is that they will continue to use the systems that already exist for the next few years. So we want to go back through those systems and see whether, what are the most important ones. We talk to our staff to help us set the priorities for that. But when you look at legacy systems, the inclination from an IT point of view is to say, oh, that's an accessibility problem here, let's fix that, let's fix that. Pretty soon, that's £1 million. It's expensive business. And you can do all of that and still miss the point, which is that people haven't got a fast enough PC. Or, actually it does work, they just don't know how to use Dragon properly. So there's a whole range of different things. We're looking at a product called Talking Point, which sits alongside Dragon. Maybe it's got a better scripting language. Maybe that's another way forward for us. And of course, all the time, trying to look at usability. So yes, it is accessible. Can we speed up the process? You can do all of that. And you're still not there because your staff don't have the tools that they need. So you've got to understand your reasonable adjustments strand. So we want an end-to-end process which we have in place, all the way from the first medical assessment. I'm an IT person, I don't do medicine, it's private, nothing to do with me, I just want the recommendations. How do we get from a recommendation to put by a manager to getting the right kit delivered quickly? If it gets delivered quickly, how do we then make sure they get the right learning and training and support? It gets put into place, make sure that's there. And then how do you deal with the queries that come up afterwards from a help desk? You've got to make sure all those things fit together. From a user's point of view, they don't care that one part is policy, one part is learning, one part is outsourced. They just want a process that works, that gels together. We've done a lot of work trying to get that in place. Key in our area here is the role of the manager, because the manager in our department oversees a lot of this. Quite often a manager will come up and they will not have come across disability before, so where do they go to get help? That's important that we provide them that sort of support. Another element to this is, if you provide that sort of support, but you have targets, you have measures. In our department, we have service level managers, as I said. We have monthly meetings where we look at our service targets. Are we meeting our targets? We bring our disabled disability network coordinator into that and our policy people. The aim is for the IT section to be held accountable by the customers who we serve. We have, for example, something like of our help desk, we have a special arrangement for our staff who use Dragon and JAWS and Zoom text and whatever. If they ring the help desk, they're immediately recognised from their staff number. There's a set of dedicated scripts. If it's a problem like their password is lost or there's printer problems, something to that, they go one way. If there's problems with Dragon, they go to the accessibility team. We get something like 6% in last month it was, calls resolved within 5 days. And in fact, we get 86% of calls resolved in the day of the call for those users. We want to deliver kit quickly. I can tell you that we can deliver 90% of all orders that come into us will be on the person's desk within 10 days of the order. In fact, last month it was the average time was 3 days. We have problems. There was an earthquake in China, destroyed the factory that makes the components for large screens. Couldn't get large screens. It happens. So there you go. The important thing is that we monitor, we look for improvements. Okay, so we do all of those things. What benefits are we looking for? Why are we bothering? We want quicker, slicker processes. Of course we do. We want fewer exceptions. We've done a lot, but we're not complacent. We know that there's still improvements that we can make, and we bring these issues to our quarterly forums. We look for improvements all the time. One big element here that we have is raising awareness for those managers. Our external website has got something like 170,000 pages. Our internal website, I think, has got something similar. So how does a manager know where to start looking? And the number of times I hear someone says, I didn't know who to contact. I don't know where to start looking. It breaks my heart. We're looking throughout this to increase staff productivity because, especially for our Dragon users, it does take them longer. You can do something with a mouse in one action. With a Dragon user, you might have to say 2 or 3 commands to achieve the same thing. It takes longer. If you do that time and time and time again, it adds to the time it takes you to do transactions. We want to improve our experience. And another measure that we have is that we want to have better products that we can buy for. So, for example, we have a dialogue started now with SAP, talking to their accessibility centre in Germany, to try to influence them to get on and do more work, especially in the area of Dragon. And to continue to share best practice and work with other staff. That was quick. I hope it wasn't too quick. That's the theory. Those are the things which are important to us. Those are the things which we've done. Those are the things we've done. But what's it like at the sharp end for the users? I'm going to introduce 2 of our users. First of all, John Flanner, who's a JAWS user from Birmingham, to tell us about his experience. He'll be sitting there. And then Chris Pett. Chris is a Dragon user. She's a manager of Dragon users, and one of our Dragon mentors as well. So, tell it like it is. John, can I ask you to start, please?
Okay, thank you. Well, it's a great privilege to be here today. I'm one of those rare people, it seems, who actually enjoys going into work every day. I'm always having my leg pulled at work. They say, what are you on, you know? But I really do enjoy going out to work. And it really started at a very low point in my life, because at the age of 19, I became blind. I had a bang on the head playing football. Football was my passion, but the bang on the head led me to having damaged the optic nerve, and within 6 months I was totally blind. That wasn't the sole cause. It turned out to be hereditary, but it was still a nasty shock, and I felt my whole world had come to an end. But I went away for rehabilitation for a few months, and I was assessed for work, and it was a real blow to my male pride, because he said, we're going to send you to be trained as an audio typist. And that, I say, was a blow. It wasn't what I expected, because the only typists I knew were women, and I wasn't particularly looking forward to this. But I got trained, and my first job was with the Ministry of Overseas Development, and then within a few months I was transferred to the Inland Revenue. And I stayed with the Inland Revenue for quite a number of years, and really enjoyed my work. I was with some great people, and I started work using a manual typewriter. I'm sure you'll remember those. And every time I made a mistake, which thankfully wasn't too often, I had to get one of the other girls in the office to come and, you know, you used to add carbon copies. You have to put the piece of paper in between the carbons to rub out the mistake. It was a real pain, and, you know, it was quite an effort. And then after a while, we went over to the electric typewriters, so that was another transition. But through it all, I always had excellent support through my management team and the people who were providing the equipment. So the training was always first class. And the biggest change was when we went over to computers. Now that was a real shock and a sharp learning curve, especially when we started using what we call screen reading software, which is what I use now. And the first one I used was a very kind of, now looking back, was quite antiquated. It was called HAL, H-A-L, and it was, but it was incredible because it used to literally do what it said, read off the screen everything I was typing, and I had to wear headphones so it didn't distract other people in the office. But I discovered the beauty of a spell checker. That was wonderful. It meant I could relax on the keyboard, just type away, and the spell checker would correct everything. And then one day, one of our income tax inspectors came in and brought one of the letters back that I'd typed. He was chuckling to himself, and he said, "John, I really don't think I can send this letter out." I said, "Why?" He said, "Well, can I read back to you what you've typed?" I said, "Yes, please do." He said, "Well, this is what this sentence says. It says to the accountant, 'Please may I have a look at your flies?'" And it should have read files. But the spell checker didn't pick that up. So I realized that even though I'm typing quite accurately, I still need to get my speech software to read through what I'd written. And in those days, I was typing medical reports for our HR department, and I had to type out this one lady who'd been off sick for quite a number of months. And as part of her report, when I listened back, I couldn't believe what I'd written on first hearing. and it says that she had to go and see the physio the rapist. Physio the rapist? I never really typed that, did I? And then I realised, of course, it was physiotherapist. But the speech software couldn't get its tongue around that, so it just read out physio the rapist, because that's how it sounded. But at least it taught me how to spell physiotherapist, didn't it? Physio the rapist, okay? But thankfully, the software has improved a lot since then, and JAWS is absolutely wonderful. And we have people working for our department, not just the tax trainers, but also the JAWS scripters, who do an amazing job in enabling people like myself to do tax work. That's jumping ahead a little, because JAWS actually stands for Job Access with Speech, and is absolutely brilliant. And it does pronounce 99.9% of the words absolutely correctly, you'll be glad to know. But about 4 years ago, or 4.5 years ago now, my whole world at work began to change, because we got the shock news that our typing team was being closed down, because there wasn't enough work to keep us going. Because most people now, with the advance of computers, are able to do their own typing on the keyboard. Many people have got excellent keyboard skills. The computers do the spell check, yeah, like flies, and they also correct the grammar. So it's pretty good, pretty accurate. So they said, we've no need for typists anymore in this office, and we all thought, all 17 of us thought, we were going to be made redundant. And I haven't got my fingers crossed behind my back, by the way. But they said, no, we're not going to make you redundant. But they said to me, John, because technology has advanced in such a way, and we're able to adapt JAWS into all kinds of situations, we can actually now train you to do tax work. So 4 years ago, I began training to do tax work, what we call open cases. And then I was trained on self-assessment, and more recently on employer maintenance. I've never had so many, having had over 20 years doing the same job and being stuck in a very deep rut. The last 4 years have been a roller coaster ride. Very exciting most of the times, and very challenging as I've got to grips with doing tax work. And now we have over 50 visually impaired people, blind and partially sighted, involved in doing tax work across the country within HMRC. And I think that's absolutely fantastic. And now we're getting the first groups of those actually getting promoted, which is something else to celebrate, because when you're a typist, there's not much further you can go. You can take typing exams and get proficiencies, but you couldn't get promotion other than to be a secretary or PA. And if you were a telephonist, which was the other traditional job for blind people, I suppose you could become senior telephonist. But there wasn't many places you could go. But now that blind people are being trained in taxes, there is no reason at all why over the next few years, as the jobs develop and as technology improves, and as JAWS gets more and more better, as JAWS gets better and the scripters become more skilled, there's no reason at all why blind people cannot be promoted up the ladder in the tax grades in a way that's never been heard of before. So I'm able to celebrate the fact that more than 50 of us now, thanks to the work that's being done by the trainers and the scripters and the encouragement we're being given by our managers, this is a new day. And for younger blind people coming into the department, there are wonderful career opportunities available to them that weren't there just a few years ago. And in my case, not only in the last few years have I been able to depart from typing and do tax work, but also because of the opportunities that have come my way, I've been able to go out, talk about my job, talk about my experience of life and work, and I'm now getting invites right across the country within HMRC and the wider civil service to go and talk about my experiences and thereby inspire and motivate other people too. So I'm able to talk to managers, I'm able to talk to disabled people, I'm able to talk to people in the lower grades and say, look, if you go about your job in a positive way and really encourage people and come up with constructive ideas how we can embrace change in a positive way, then that is inspiring and encouraging to people at all levels. So I just I'm just so thankful to not just to have a job, but to be in an environment where change is creating opportunities for work, not just for blind people, but for disabled people and anybody who is looking for opportunities to develop and diversify. So that's my story. I'm so happy. I could have retired 2 years ago when I was 60, but I've decided to stay on because the opportunities are so exciting. Thank you very much. Thank you.
I've been a Dragon user for 5 years now. Having been recommended it when I was having trouble typing because of arthritis in both of my hands. Initially, I was doing the same work as the rest of the team, but became very frustrated because of the length of time it took to complete each case, because the type of work I was doing didn't work well with Dragon. It was then agreed with my manager that I would move on to processing self-assessment returns, as this was a process which worked well with Dragon. I have now been a manager for 3 years and I have 5 Dragon users on my team, all of whom have different problems. But we all have one thing in common: the need to reduce the use of keyboard and or mouse. This is where Dragon comes in. Unfortunately, it does not work well with all of our corporate systems, and so they may have to be given a different type of work. If the team are doing one type of work and the Dragon uses something else because our corporate applications are not compatible with the Dragon software, the user will understandably become frustrated and feel isolated. To become an effective team member, the user wants to be able to do the same work as the rest of the team. If the department makes the applications and programs accessible to and usable by Dragon, 3 things will be achieved. 1, productivity will increase. 2, morale will improve. And 3, an effective team will have been created. Managers. The role of the manager is a big issue. Many of them are not aware of what Dragon can or cannot do. I know that managers have precious little time to spare, but they do need to sit with their Dragon users and see the software in action, or not, as the case may be. They need to realise that what their team member achieved before may not be possible with Dragon. They need to understand that the user will need time to learn to use Dragon, as this is a skill. The user cannot be expected to receive Dragon one day and process 20 returns, for example, the next. They need to learn how to navigate around all of the screens by voice. They may need scripts or commands writing for the work they are doing. We should be aware that frequent changes of work can be difficult. They may not have all the commands they need to switch on to something new. This is something staff without disabilities have difficulty with. It is twice as bad for someone having to learn new work at a moment's notice and learn how to do it by voice. To managers, please do not leave them feeling isolated. Give them ongoing support and encouragement. Be aware that training is a big issue. They will get 1 day or 2 half-days training by an outside company when they first receive Dragon. This shows them how to use Microsoft Word, Excel and Outlook. It will also show them how to navigate around the intranet. Then that's it, you're on your own. There's no formal training provided to show them how to do their work with Dragon. This is one of our biggest issues and something we are hoping will improve in the very near future. Now on to users. If treated in the right way, the Dragon user can become an equal member of the team and feel much happier. As a user, however, you must manage your own expectations. You have to realise that you will not be able to achieve as much as you did previously. Be aware of Dragon's limitations. Remember, it was not designed as a disability aid. Realise that some things will not work well. When problems occur, make your manager aware. Use the IT service centre and use the Dragon mentoring group. Please do not just switch it off, which happens in a lot of cases, and therefore cause yourself more problems. Finally, to managers and everyone, things are getting better. Progress is very slow, but there is progress. Things are a whole lot better than they were 3 years ago. And I'd just like to finish with 3 messages. 1, to the user, be positive, be proactive. By everyone working together, we can move forward. Nothing was ever achieved by being negative. To the manager, take time out to become familiar with Dragon's success and its limitations. Read the manager's guides on reasonable adjustments. There's plenty of information on the intranet. Use the Dragon mentors. They are there for managers as well as users. And to the department, please make sure that all new systems and programs are written with the particular needs users in mind, and make sure they are tested by the users. Most of all, please let us have in place a proper training package. That is training on a one-to-one basis, catering for the type of work the user will have to do. We have the people in the department with the expertise and knowledge. Please let us use them. Thank you.
I don't suspect I need to say too much else. I think the inspiration of John and Chris, how they contribute to our organisation, and one of the great things about the civil service, we all have them in our organisations. They've all got great stories. I imagine you've all got staff who can tell great stories like John and Chris. I've got loads of staff who can't yet tell the stories like John and Chris. And that's why we're very excited about trying to drive this agenda on and bringing this to the forefront of the civil service. So I think we have a real opportunity to lead the whole country in this, and what we lead in the civil service, I'm sure the private sector will follow. I think they've summarised both, with Chris in her honesty, back to winning the hearts and minds. Getting managers to understand this isn't a problem, it's an opportunity, is crucial. Supporting them with the technology because it's there these days. Supporting it with some of the tools that we're starting to develop in BTAT to help you convince some of the managers in your organisation that need convincing. And we're doing this because we want John to be successful, we want Chris to be successful. We've got 15% of our team, we want to be as successful as John and Chris. And I think that's a hugely important motivation to bring us onto it. I first heard John's story about 2 years ago, and I was the CIO, and I was pretty convinced I was doing a great job. And I heard John, I thought, I can't be doing that great a job, because John's been really lucky with the managers he's had. So John's inspiration is one of the reasons I've been taking this on and driving on, and Chris and other people's stories like that I've heard recently. So, we do take inspiration from you guys, so thank you. Finally, policy alone is not enough, as I think Sean said. Putting all those steps, using the maturity models, understanding we're at base one, we're just barely out of the second group, and we want to actually get further. We're never going to be world class because we don't think we can ever afford it, but we want to go further than we have, and then get everybody, all our disabled staff and our customers as well, to understand we've gone as far as we can. We've got more to do, and hopefully you find that very useful. I think we've got some time for some questions, so I think Nasra's going to come and do the questions. Nasra?
Well, it's a big thank you to the team who've done a wonderful job. Believe me, for someone who's been campaigning and preaching the use of technology to help disabled people, I'm hugely inspired by the experience of HMRC. And I must say, it's not the typical experience you get in the industry. They are extremely advanced in their thinking and their practice. So real congratulations to the heads of the department as well as the staff. They're doing a wonderful job. I'd like to invite some questions.
Hi, I'm Shirley Jones from Jobcentre Plus, working on discrimination. I think you touched on it, Steve, but I'm interested in what you're doing for managers to help them, because I think the key to this is the manager having the discussion with people who may not be open to saying, I've got this disability or I need this help, feeling a bit vulnerable if they do that. So looking at reasonable adjustments and in many ways, I think the key is the good manager discussion. So
I don't think we've done anywhere near as enough yet, but what we have done is made it very clear with my engagement and having another board member fully engaged in disability and getting communications and messaging through Sean's team, that there should be no manager in HMRC who knows that reasonable adjustment isn't something we'd expect them to look at. I don't think it's as ingrained, it's not in the DNA, and we do have to rely on a lot of the disabled staff to actually going through the networks that Sean and the other guys have got set up to tell us where managers aren't doing it. So at the moment it's a reactive type of programme. We've got this thing called PaySetter, which is driving management and improved behaviours across the whole of HMRC, and we fully intend to bring this into that being a good manager means you understand what you have to do, but at the moment it's reactive. But I think Sean, perhaps you might want to comment how effective those reactive programmes we have.
I think there's an awful lot more work to do. The point I was going to address, we have something which I mentioned before called the end-to-end process, which is how you go from medical assessment through to provision, through to training. It's a graphic thing that's on the intranet available to all staff, and within there the manager role is absolutely explicit from beginning to end. And the fact that it's not an end-to-end process, it's a cycle. So once you've got it, you then start going through that. So that's a part of it. Behind that then comes communication. We do have a disability package, training package, which was promoted in the department. As I say, it's in every member of staff's annual agreement as well. They should have a diversity of disability thing there. A lot of work to go. Does that answer your point?
We're looking after Leslie Strathy well for you as well, by the way. We're keeping her very busy.
Hello, I'm Peter Gregory from the Department of Transport. I've recently taken over responsibility for managing the diversity agenda. Gone off, so I'm going to stand up. First of all, I wanted to say thank you very much. First of all, I just want to say thank you very much to the speakers, because it's really opened my eyes to some really important ways in which we can resolve some issues that we have. And I didn't know anything about this before, so it's been really helpful. I did find, though, when Sean was talking, I was getting a little dejected, because it felt like there was an awful lot to do along the way, because you kept saying that's not enough. My point really, and my question really was about economies of scale and the business case. I was doing a quick calculation, and if you've got 15% of your workforce with disabilities, then that's probably about 12,000 people. And what I was wondering if you had any advice for organisations which were a lot smaller, where I guess you still have to make the changes and the investment in the software, but you don't necessarily have the same level of business scale. So I just wondered if you could say something about advice.
Two things I can suggest there. First of all, I mentioned during the presentation there's a group called the Cross-Government Accessibility Network, where people from different government departments come together to share expertise. If I see you afterwards, make sure you know about that, so there's a source there. I'm sorry if I gave the impression that it's difficult. It is difficult, but IT is difficult. You've got to build security, you're going to build robustness. These are just standard practices. So, are you from the IT side of the world, or okay, going to interact with people? It's just a discipline. And yeah, there's a lot to do, but if it worked first time, we wouldn't be needed.
One of the things, Peter, we might want to pick up is that buying licenses for Dragon and Jaws and all those things, the bigger the volume we buy, obviously the better discount we get. I just wonder, are we joined up enough across the government departments to be able to leverage, because we buy an awful lot. And one of the conversations perhaps we should be having is how can we help you in the smaller departments leverage our buying power and DWP's buying power, because we try to do a bit of that together. And I know Dragons and Jaws people are very keen to have that. They're not adverse to wanting to do that. And Nasra can help facilitate some of that. So perhaps that's another thing we can do proactively to help. And I think if you don't have to start what we did, I think one of the big things we've been able to do is to invest in some of the numbers of staff and people like Sean and others. I think you should be able to leverage from that, and we should be able to give you a lot of that learning, a lot of the BTAT stuff we've talked about. We should be able to share that. So you're not starting from base camp. Hopefully you can start slightly more advanced. But I think the other thing important is establishing where you are and establishing where you want to go are really important. But establishing where you need to go, it needs to be right for your business. And I think that there is probably the first steps to do, is to establish where you want to go. And then you can scale that over years. I think most of the staff, if you engage them, know we can't do this overnight. They're part of the civil service. They know the pressures we're all under with cost, etc. And I think the maturity of the conversations, Chris isn't happy with all the stuff that she gets, but she appreciates, I think, that we're trying, and it might not be perfect, but we're trying to get there. I think having those conversations with staff and showing them we're on the journey, engaging them in the real practical things we can do to help them along the way, is a hugely powerful agenda to have, and probably a good starting place.
Can I also add, Employees Forum on disability have vast amounts of information, resources, which you could always refer to. Any other question?
I'm Jackie Pearce from the Ministry of Justice. I just wanted to ask, I'm a health and safety practitioner and I have a sort of a marginal role to play in this. But I just wanted to ask, what are your arrangements internally? How do you fund disability sort of extra equipment? I mean, because we waste a lot of time, I think, on discussing whether it should be funded locally or whether there should be a central fund or some sort of levy. We waste time that would be better
I'll give you an answer.
Else.
In our department, the rule is we have medical assessment, we use Capita, but we also use Access to Work and whatever. If there's a recommendation made for IT equipment, the IT section pay. We have a budget, as I mentioned before, budget for that. For non-IT work, such as specialist furniture and whatever, our estates also have a budget. Okay, so it's agreed in advance. Centrally, not locally, centrally. And one of the messages we have to put out to our managers is we pay for this centrally. Don't say we can't have it because they're worried about their local budget.
Of course, you make provisions for everybody in your organisation, so disabled staff should be no exception. And if you really proactively plan it, then you'll find that it's not as high as you might think. If you try to firefight, it'd be a lot more expensive than if you actually put the provisions in place to begin with within your budgets.
Hi, I'm Karen Elbridge from Revenue and Customs. Just following on from the funding, we've had recommendations on a particular case for Access to Work. So in that case then, would part of the funding be done through them, or is it, you saying it would all just be covered?
There are instructions on the intranet.
Okay.
I'll put you in contact with the right people for dealing with that. They do want to try and pay for it, but like Dragon, we have a global license anyway, so we don't pay for individual copies.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, there are, if you know where to look, instructions for how to do it. Chris, I think you were involved in it.
I've had 4 Access to Work reports on my team, so I've been through quite a lot on that.
I've got your name.
Come and see us
Thank
after,
you.
Karen.
Thank you.
Any others, or are we...
John?
John Lamb from Mobility Magazine. I wondered if you could give us some idea of what the additional cost of making IT systems accessible might be. I mean, is it possible to say what sort of additional percentage you might need to budget?
We looked at 6 of our major systems last year, and to bring them up completely to our internal standards, some of these are quite old systems, we were talking about £1 million each per system. Does that give you a flavour, John?
How much does the system cost?
That's a piece of string question, isn't it? Yeah. None of our systems are small. Yeah, they're all very big and very meaty and do very unpleasant things to most of us in the UK. So they have to be quite accurate. So I think when we look at, when I was the CIO, we would look at this regularly and look at the £1 million, and invariably we could find cheaper ways of doing it. We could get to the answer, get to the support that we needed to provide. Because invariably it was about the integration between the supporting applications, rather than, because some of these codes are so back in the, we've got every version of computer code you could imagine, the same as DWP have. And so you go back, you just can't change some of those, you have to put the interfaces right. And I think working with Microsoft and others, we've been trying to do that. So I think that's a number that you can quote, but I think it doesn't help because we didn't actually spend that much money to get the system.